no one's upset that that building's in 50 movies.
Yeah.
So why does it matter that a bar was in Sex Life and now is in Glamourous?
Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Coming up this week, we have Adam Rowe, production designer and art director, and Joe Madziak, who is a construction coordinator. They've both been on before, just, individually, but they have a connection because they've worked together. So we're bringing them back. We've got them together. They're telling their story. It's super cool.
Yeah. And they've got mad chemistry. So I think, it's an honor to speak with them. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy their discussion.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, if you want to know what people do behind the scenes, this is a good one for you. So hope you like it.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and this week on Tuesday or this past week, I guess, since this is coming out next week, we were at SPF Vancouver 2025, and
Mm-hmm.
always fun. 10 years in, right?
I
Like,
know.
wow.
10 years in, it's such a cool thing to see, people the same, people come back year after year. So like you see some of the same people, but you also, meet a lot of new people who are interested just coming, into the industry and wanting to learn what sustainability is all about. And so it was a good mix in that regard this year. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
And the food was excellent.
I know.
Shout out to the team. Shout out to the organizers. Shout out to Melanie
Uh-huh.
for spearheading, this over the years, and just
Yeah.
awesome.
I know. It's one of these things where like we talk a lot about sustainability, but we also walk the talk, right? So like the food was good, it was vegan, vegetarian, you know, all reusables, all the stuff, compostables, all of that. So try to do a good job renting
And
food.
everybody there was a doer. They were all the
Doer.
doers. So I think more importantly, I mean, this is the room full of folks that are actually making it happen, which is what we talk a lot about on this podcast, and this is why
Mm-hmm.
we do this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so like, what were your highlights? Any
Yeah,
key
I mean,
takeaways?
yeah, like I mean, gosh, talk about programming. First of all, the programming itself, stellar. I mean, Melanie does a fantastic, she's a great programmer.
Mhm.
So that was awesome to see. Really diverse voices and interesting perspectives and that sort of thing. But just, you know, um, a deeper level of conversation when we're talking about, circularity, for example. Like we had a great conversation about circularity. In the early days, 10 years ago, we were just talking about waste and like a 3-bin
Yeah,
system.
water bottles.
And yeah, and the conversation has totally evolved. It's more sophisticated, more nuanced. There are new companies on the scene. We're digging in, right? I also really loved the conversation about ethical AI. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah, that's the hottest topic in town.
yeah, yeah. And I thought the panel did a great job of like going, deep. It wasn't just superficial, like you kind of hear like, oh, anyway, they did such a great job. So that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool to see the panel on energy. I mean, I was like, we were talking about this, like, I didn't recognize anybody there. And they all knew what they were deeply talking, deeply passionate and talking about real stuff and making it happen. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. It's just like it's taking a whole life of its own.
I know.
And I love that. I love that because those are some of the seeds that we planted a decade ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Really cool.
every year there's some kind of conversation around that, right? And like year one, it was like, hey, look at this battery that can be used.
Hmm.
And now it's like, okay, look at all these cool ways they're using batteries and look how the lighting's changed and look how, we're plugging into the grid. Like the sophistication was great. So
Yeah. It's
yeah.
interesting. I had a couple conversations, interestingly enough, too, with friends who are also diversifying their careers in film, right? They're going adjacent to other parts of the entertainment industry or other parts of the service provider industry or equipment provider industry. So I thought that was really interesting too, right? You're seeing as people progress in their careers, right? It's not just like hardcore production because film can come and go, or things change. And so it's cool to see how everybody's just evolving their career, but also in sustainability, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
car rentals or setting up rigging for big festivals and things like that. They're all adjacent to this production industry and are all really passionate about the industry still, but finding different avenues to partake in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally. Totally. It was really cool. I talked to a climate journalist from the CBC, and she was talking about how, sometimes there's, how she tries to deal with maybe internal dynamics or whatever, because we're trying to integrate climate into just be real about what's going on in the world. And then she also is trying to, use things like an e-bike and whatnot to get around to interview sources just in and around town. And she finally got her e-bike. And I was telling her, oh, like we had worked with the CBC, this was Green Spark Group, to create their strategy and whatnot. And she looked at me and she was like, it is because of that strategy that I got my e-bike, because it trickled all the way down. Her manager knew that, this was important. And it was like a full circle moment,
Hmm.
honestly. It was really cool. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah,
love it.
all
The whole
sorts of
day was
people.
full circle. Hmm.
I know. I know. Anyway, 10 years. Yay.
Yeah.
Um, and then we will have the tie-in at the SPF in Toronto, and that is on November 24th. So I'll be there. We'll
Hmm.
be interviewing. We might have a guest host, because I know, Mark, you're not gonna be
Yeah.
able to go. But yeah, it'll be at the CBC. And so that'll be super cool.
Yeah.
Lots of Ontario-based organizations will be there. So if you're there in and around that area, stop by. Let me.
Stop by. Stop in for the whole day.
Oh yeah, the whole day. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great, and it's at the CBC. Like, it's a great
Yeah.
venue. It's right downtown. So anyway, it's really cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Love
as
it.
always, like and subscribe and share this with a friend. And hey, you can book us. We'll come do a live episode in your neck of the woods.
Mhm.
It'd be fun.
Yeah. Love it.
We are back, and we got a great episode today because we're talking to both Adam Rowe and Joe Madziak, who we have talked to individually, and now we're bringing together because Joe is a construction coordinator and Adam is a production designer, and they've worked on the same show in different shows in various capacities. And so I know you both came up in each other's interviews, and now we're bringing it all together. So welcome back, you guys.
Yeah.
Super
Welcome
fun.
back.
Thank you.
so so I guess we'll just did I hit it all right? Joe, construction coordinator, right? I want to make sure I got your title correct.
That's correct. That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, and you're currently on production, and but you and Adam worked together in the past on production in Toronto, is that right?
That's correct. We first worked together on Good Sam and
Okay.
then on Glamourous. Yeah.
Okay.
I
And I
I
would work with him again anytime. So yeah.
Same thing. I feel the same way, 100%. I said on the podcast that we had without Joe, that like Joe is patient zero when it comes to the, contagious, infectious result of reuse that has happened with Matlock, and that, that started in really in 2020 actually. So we're in 5 years of living. I mean, I'm kind of a one-hit wonder at this point. I'm living with the same.
30 years later, right? That's the
Yeah, the same
Yeah.
windows, the same staircase. And I don't mind that. Some people are like, doesn't it bore you? It doesn't bore me. And I'm saying that because I think Joe feels the same way, that like certain people can get real bored, or they don't like reuse, or they just want to build it from scratch, or they have this idea that, it's better labor to build new. But part of the fun of working with Joe is that we see I think the more reality of it all is that we need to reuse and we have to reuse, and there is no downside to it. And I don't want to speak for Joe, but I think that's what brought us together in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions I have, because I wonder,
if you both could break it down for me, because I've heard, Joe, you've mentioned like it's great to work with a great designer, and then Adam, you've mentioned it also from your perspective in working with construction and whatnot. Can you help me understand how production design works with construction, and Joe, vice versa? How does that work? Just to lay some groundwork here.
Okay. Well, yeah, and you've heard me mention it, and I've said this many times in speaking. It helps so much if you've got the designer on board at first, and if you can design in mind of reusing. And some people call that design modular. I think that scares people off because we're not talking about like Lego type modular, because we have saws, we can make anything modular. But it's just, I'll give you an example. The hospital on where this is where it all started with Adam and I already had in mind reusing. We floated the ceiling above the flats, just minuscule, so we could move in and out. We could move flats in and out and change scenery. We could reuse certain things. We could take walls here, move them on that side for a different look. And Adam, you refreshed my memory, but we had that one room we must have used 10, 12 times. It was an X-ray room, or it was uh, we had it as a lab. We had it that one room, right, Adam? Remember,
Yeah.
it was
And, and
yeah.
I would say that, kind of zooming out, like part of so just to answer your question, is that like production designer and construction coordinator are right and left arm to each other, because like a dreamer can dream and a builder can build, but they have to like find where they can meet in the middle. And there's usually sometimes tension in that relationship because dreams get big and expensive and budgets are real and they're a service of a producer. Whereas sometimes you have to be careful because like a construction coordinator is also servicing a showrunner and servicing a story, but they have hard budgets and hard deadlines. And, an art director, a good art director will help manage the space and manage the time. And then a showrunner hires a production designer to dream with them to help tell the story. And what's such a fun pleasure about working with Joe is that like there's a lot of pressure already just in deadlines and time commitments and storytelling. And there's a little bit of cushion that Joe has that doesn't let the pressure of the deadline and the budget always drive what you're building. And we can always have a conversation later that like, oh, this has gotten more expensive, or you picked out $1 billion wallpaper, or we can't afford this floor, or time is making it difficult to do this thing. So, there is a yin and yang for those things. And some designers, and Joe, tell me if I'm wrong, don't care. And they just storm off bombastic and then they say they want the dream. But I don't think that's reality, like maybe in an Apple, TV budget, but not certainly in the budgets that I've had.
It's almost
That's
like
correct. I agree.
Yeah, in business they call it a visionary and an integrator, right? You always have that push pull. Someone's out in front way too far, and someone's behind, reining it in a little bit. Yeah.
And so what Joe was saying about a set that changes 10 times is that I call that a swing space. And so one of the unique things about Good Sam is that brought Joe and I on much earlier in the prep. I think we had I think Joe, you had like 1 week and I had 2 or 3 weeks where I could put things on paper, and I knew the nature of CBS storytelling because I did Criminal Minds. I've had history with CBS, that you never really know where the story is going to go. And so you have to design, back doors or things that flip and turn. And so embedded in our hospital set were these swing areas. And so when we were developing those, that's where Joe came up with, I think it was more on him than it was on me, a modularization or a flexibility that these walls could turn or flip, and they were engineered on the construction side so that they could do those things quickly, because sometimes they had to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. As a designer, I can't get that in the weeds in some ways because that's very micro, and I would love to. I just don't have the brain power or the bandwidth. I like it when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, we made these things, do these things." I'm like, "Great, cool, thumbs up." And then I know when I'm designing in the future. And that comes from what I consider a really great marriage of a construction coordinator who understands that a designer needs maximum flexibility because the budget's only so big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Joe, then so when you receive the dream and you talk to the production designer
Yeah.
about the dream, what do you do with it? How does that, what's your process there? How do you think about it?
Well, I try first off to sit down and try and price it out and see what I feel, you know, knowing. So, for example, uh, I would say on Glamourous, the second time we worked together, I probably priced it out more accurately because now I knew Adam's taste a little better too. So the
Okay.
first time you're working with the designer, you have to make a lot of guesses because not we haven't picked all the materials, we haven't picked which way we're going often, or paint finishes, or finishes period. Sometimes they know, and that helps, and I ask questions, but you just never be able to lay it out. So there's a lot of guesswork on my point, and sometimes you always hope that if you've guessed over on one, then you'll use that up when you've guessed under on another, and
Mm-hmm.
it tends to work out if you put little cushions in here or there. But I think that's the first priority, and then sometimes right off the bat you can say, "There's no way we can afford all this." So let's sit down and decide where the money should go, where the big money should go, like what's important, and then maybe we can fake some other stuff in the background. So there's all those conversations early on, and then other times you're well into it and you're thinking you're doing good, and then all of a sudden, because the drawings are never finished in this business until almost until the set's finished. I've actually had art department come down and measure stuff that we've built so they can put it on a drawing. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
mean that's rare, but sometimes that's how it works. So you never finish it all. So sometimes you don't realize to the end, like, oh, we got to save a bit of money here, and that's where you would go to Adam and say, hey, what can we do here? What do you think? And still get that look that you want. So
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
it's a very organic process when you're working with the right design people.
I think that what I'm seeing too from my position, and this is where I think this podcast is interesting versus the two we've had separate,
Yeah.
is that, Joe's been doing this a while. I've been doing it not as long, but I'm seeing even less of prep, which means that the construction department is what I would call arm waving a lot more because there's just no prep. Like they've cut back even on, I'd rather be open about it, even on a show like Matlock, which is what I would consider successful in its second season. Yes, we had prep, so I don't want to say we didn't, but drawings take time and development of an idea takes time, and no one wants to pay for that. That's the truth. And so I'm always showing people like Joe versions of something that will probably happen. And then we're asking them to budget it. And we don't know what our wallpaper is, and we don't know what our showrunner's taste is, and we don't actually know how many linear feet of carpet we have to buy. And so we're asking our, what did you call it, Mark? Inventors? What was the word you used?
Yeah, there's the integrators, there's the visionaries and integrators, right? And there's
We're
always this
asking,
Yeah,
tension.
yeah, we're asking our integrators to
yeah,
be
Yeah.
responsible for something that's basically always slipping out of their hands. And
Yeah.
I think Good Sam is a pretty great example that show ballooned in a way that I think we both were surprised by. I mean, I can look back at that and go, oh my gosh, I don't even know how big the budget was or how over we went. I don't know that answer, but I do know that they shot every single square inch of that set and that we are still using it to this day. So like there's this part of me that goes, was it justified? Did it
Yeah.
work? I don't know of a better case of it working. Joe, I'm so curious to know what you think about all that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was worth it. Even if you just take into consideration Good Sam, as you said, we used every inch of that, and also the powers that be, the producers, understood that part of that overage was out of our hands because the studio wasn't finished. Remember the backhoe in the hole of the floor, which set us back about a week, and so part of that overage was overtime. The producers understood that.
Well, but also like the development of a new relationship. Like I was learning I was learning our showrunners and our producers, and new shows are exciting. I mean, I think that's the thing that's fun about making new artwork. You know, one character's storyline all of a sudden pivots the entirety of a show, and so you have to then accommodate that. And when you're dealing with a soap opera style project where you have two groups of people becoming four groups of people becoming six group of people, they all have their own spaces and their own walls, and think about anything like Gilmore Girls. Everybody has a house, everybody has a kitchen, everybody has a living room. That's kind of what was happening in Good Sam. It was like everybody had a thing, and you need the space for those things and the walls for those things.
And is that where the modularity or the swing sets started to come in, because everybody needed a separate space, so you were able to use the same material but make it look like a separate space? Am I understanding that correctly, Adam, as you're describing
I
it?
think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
most of your listeners probably have been to a hospital at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And so like think about think about the look of an emergency room versus the look of a patient room. You
Yeah,
tend to have like, it's a little bit like a cruise ship. There's a basement and then everything starts moving up.
right.
And hospitals work on price per square foot, and your most expensive stuff is the closest to the front door, your emergency room. And
Yeah.
they have a look, and it's very different when you get up to the patient rooms. But at the end of the day, their windows are windows. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we were doing on Good Sam, for instance, is flipping and turning windows so that what looked like the basement, with a tiny window at the top, could then be flipped upside down. And then you had a big window at the top with a tiny solace at the bottom. I would say we did that the most. Would you agree,
Okay.
Joe?
Yes.
So Joe, I mean, in that experience, or taking I guess maybe the freedom to do that, or however it came about, how has that translated for your work after Good Sam, like on the next production, like and then even and even onward? Have you like developed processes or tips or tricks or whatever to be able to do this on on different shows? And I know you guys have worked on other shows together, but I'm just curious how you take that learning and move it forward.
Um, yeah, I think the biggest thing is I try and keep in mind that any of this could be reworked as something else, like whether it's an apartment, a jail cell, or a cop shop. You constantly looking at, even if we get drawings and they'll probably they say we need this wall wild, this wall wild. Like maybe they'll pick 3 walls that are wild, but we could tend to build that virtually as much as we can. Any wall is wild, which means then that we can change that, take that out, change it around, change the texture, and have a different look. And so that way I can sell that on designers. Like, what if we use this apartment again? What if we took this? I can get you new windows here, blow that wall out, and then everything else stays the same. Or change the entrance over to there, put a porch on it, and now it's a house. So those type of things. So I just really keep that in the back of my mind. And I think I've talked about this before, but Adam taught me. I used to think that iconic pieces that are really recognizable pieces you couldn't use again. But Adam had the courage to use like strong pieces. We had like these light units that on Glamourous that were every episode with minimal changes. We had there was one episode where this woman wasn't sure if she was gay or not, or if she wanted to come out. So they did this funny little, it was almost like a game show thing where she had to go through these different sketches or vignettes. And to each of those openings, Adam did this half round archway. It had chase lights on it. So it's kind of like a game show feel almost. And you know what? We took those lights off. We painted those with high gloss paint, and they ended up being used as the center core pieces of a makeup launch party. And they looked amazing. Right, Adam?
Yeah, no, it's true. It is. I've been learning that audiences are forgivable and they forget things. They don't forget everything, but they forget a lot. And I'm using that as a designer to my advantage or to the show's advantage. And then I need someone like Joe and the people that he hires to adapt and change things and be okay with that. Because I have run into the challenges of people not wanting to reuse. One of my favorite things about working with Joe is that I don't think I ever had to lobby to reuse something, and I find that happening. I have to kind of like
Yeah.
remember we all saw Free Willy and we cared about whales for 5 years. Like that's the kind of lobbying I kind of have to do to people to be like, please reuse this wall, don't just rebuild it.
But
Yeah.
seems common sense to us having this conversation, and also other industries that do this already. But it still seems like this is not the norm, right? And this is still a challenge. Um, you know, how difficult is it to actually convince to walk into a new production that you may or may not have worked with, new producers, et cetera, and convince them of this, of reuse and this type of design thinking?
I want to hear Joe's opinion on this.
Uh, I think it's quite challenging often with certain designers. They get scared off. They think, oh, I don't want to use other people's products, or I don't know. It can be challenging. And I wanted to just I just go back to Adam. If you remember at the beginning of Glamourous, we bought an entire bar off someone and reuse that, and you would know, like that helped our budget immensely, and you would never know that bar. We changed it so much, and it was great, but it was such a foundation to start with. A lot of designers, if you said there's a bar available, why don't we start with that, they would look at you like, yeah, there's no way, you know. And I think they would think it would force their hand for designing, and maybe it does a little bit, but you can build creatively. That bar looked amazing, like, you know,
Yeah,
and I don't know if any of it was dictated by what we bought, but you know,
yeah, I agree, and that's
but it can be challenging.
I struggle with the same thing. Like I really do it. There's something there that I don't know if it's a imagination lesson. I don't know if it's a possibility lesson. I don't know if it's an identity or someone's thumbprint. Like I don't know, but I run into that too. I run into it often, and I have talked to a lot of designers about how, you know, people ask, how did you do that? And I kind of want to be like, what do you mean, how did I do that? We just did it. Like it was sitting there. We painted it, you know, like I said this when I watched Fellow Travelers. There's a building in Toronto that's used as like every American senator building, and it's in a lot of movies. And I know that building because Toronto only has, I think it's the post office, maybe. I'm not sure what it is in real life, but it's like you guys use that building all the time, and no one's upset that that building's in 50 movies.
Yep.
So why does it matter that a bar was in Sex Life and now is in Glamourous? Like they don't, that I don't see that as an issue. So like at all, like there's not even a problem there. So when I talk to other people who are like, ooh, that was on another show, I want to be like, so the Grease high school is in every Toyota commercial ever made. Like, why do we care?
Yeah.
Ego.
Yeah.
Well,
But yeah,
what,
to answer your question, it can be challenging. Yes.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and what I learned I mean, talking to you both separately, but I think Adam, like you really drove it home for me that the the set can be so much, you can make your budget go so much further, and the set can be so much more than you maybe even originally thought it could be if you started with something existing already, and then you could amplify that a lot more and take it a lot further. I think you said you had mentioned it in the context of Matlock or something to that effect, where that set just had a, you know, much richer I don't know, design element than it normally would have on the
Yeah,
budget
I
you
mean,
originally had.
I actually thought that that would be what Joe might have answered. Like I feel like from where I sit, because I'm I'm very close to the creative development side. Obviously, Joe's role is too, but Joe's role has a much rooted in production. Like, can we do this? Can we afford this? Can you put a number to this thing that is living in somebody else's imagination? And so I live from where I sit that Joe might have an easier sell to production to say, hey, we got this other bar, let's reuse this other bar. And some producers somewhere is going to be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's make the production designer do that. But it doesn't seem like that's what happens. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes.
So I think that's an interesting thing because, like, you know, on the show that I'm on now, Matlock, that's what you're talking about, Zena, that
Yeah.
like we would not have Matlock as it is. And what people are resonating, they love how big it is and it moves like a hot potato, and you're moving around the story like you're moving around a game board. It's very much like Clue in real life. it would not have happened if Joe hadn't built the staircase and we didn't have the second floor from Good Sam that then got changed and altered and we got more pieces for Glamourous, even more windows. So like when Matlock became the pilot and it was shot on that set, and then, we heard it was going to get thrown away. Matlock looks the way that it does because of 5 years of design history. If it didn't have that, it would have a very tiny version of what we have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so can we kind of pick that apart a little bit more just to really underscore? I mean, this is 5 years of design and construction and existing materials got used on multiple sets and then or for multiple sets, multiple shows, and then you used it for Matlock for the pilot and then was able um, to take it and amplify it and make a larger set from that. How does that process flow from year 1 to year 5? I mean, I'm just like, I just really want to try to understand this because I feel like this is such an important case study to share with people that are struggling in this tension. How do I do it? How do I take this set? How do I preserve it? How do I retheme it? How do I, how am I going to sell it to get it to the next phase and have it be a 5+ year multiple show kind of endeavor?
I mean, I don't know what Joe is doing in Joe's world, and I know what I was doing in my world. Like, but basically, Good Sam happened, and it was 3 stages full of stuff, and then it went dark. Right? I don't even know how long it was dark. I just know that it was dark. And then Joe, I think you were approached by Frank and John to do Glamourous, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
and then I was approached to do Glamourous, and because Joe had built the set for Joe had built the set for Good Sam, and he was going to be on Glamourous. I was relieved big time because there was no way I could turn Good Sam into Glamourous without the person who built it. Like that's like asking someone to re-put this puzzle together, and you five pieces are gone. And not only that, Jamie, who built a lot of it, and Tread, and then Elliot, who was a painter, they were all part of Joe's team. And I'm not kidding. I'm a little emotional. Like if I didn't have those people, there's no way that Good Sam could have become Glamourous because I think we had like 5 weeks max. I don't even know what we had, but it wasn't long.
That's right. That's right. And we have to credit Frank and John, Zena, and that's what you were getting at too, is you have to maybe convince the producers this is the way to go, but they're behind it all the way along. Like both the change from Good Sam to Glamourous, and then once Adam and I had approached them about saving Glamourous to ship to Matlock, they were quickly behind us on that too, right, Adam? They got it. So,
Yeah. And like
yeah.
so like when people really, to really brass tack this and people want to redo it, there's 3 key players that I think I'm learning in this conversation, and I have learned, but I'm relearning. You have to have a producing team who's looking up and looking out, because there's no way that Joe and I would have known that Glamourous even existed on the docket, because, secrets aren't fun, but that's how the entertainment business works. And, it's not like there's a big billboard somewhere that says new shows coming. Like that doesn't happen. So like someone had to tell Joe and I that this could be happening. And then I had to interview and I had to get the job. Had I not gotten the job, I don't know. And I'm very certain that Frank and John had a hand in helping that happen, because Glamourous, again, like Matlock, would have probably had a tinier set because they only had so much money to build whatever their permanent sets were. And they were going to swoop in and then we were going to retheme Good Sam.
Right. Right. So really, like I'm starting to kind of back this up. Like it's really important for the producers to have that view of what's going on, as you say, Adam, and then be able to bring on a consistent team over and over to be, and then that's that unlocks the possibility for these kinds of transitions and set reuse and whatnot to happen. Does that, like, at the fundamental level, is that what we're saying here? Like,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could have been done with another team other than us, but it just would have been more of a struggle and maybe not as fluent as like in terms of the only having that 5 weeks prep sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it could have been done with another construction team, but it just was so much shorthand between Adam and I, you know?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a that
in
is
fact,
good.
I don't know if you remember, Adam, the second phase, yeah, as we walked through Glamourous, fully changed, I said to Adam, I don't know if you believe in fate, but I said, I think this set was destined for this show to begin with. Because it just looks so good at Glamourous, but then now it looks so amazing at Matlock. So that's the thing. It's serving each show very well. The story each time.
I would say that two things that Joe kind of triggered, that he's right. Like I think for anyone who's thinking about dreaming about this, whether you're a producer, production designer, costume designer, you don't have to have the same team to do it, but you have to have the elasticity of like grandma underpants in your brain to understand that like it doesn't have to be new every time. You can redo something. And I think that's where part of the challenge is that people can retheme their living room and they can buy a new sofa and they can do that easily. People do that every day, all the time.
Yeah.
You can do that in scenery too. Like it's that basic. You're telling a story with walls, what's on those walls, what's in those walls. You still need walls. Like, I guess that's the best way that I can break it down. And I think that's what Joe's good at, is that he understands that, like he said, a wild wall, meaning it goes away. All walls are wild. And there's more chop saws, we can always cut something down or stretch a board out.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. That's the magic of it. That's the creativity and the craftsmanship element of all of this.
One of the questions that we have and comes up is also around storing this gear, right? Storing all this stuff. So there's this huge, industry around storage, obviously self-storage. But when someone says, what about the cost of storing this gear? And what if it doesn't ever get used? It's out there for 10 years. Is that something that comes to mind when you're budgeting this or thinking about reuse?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the big, and that's what I've been pushing for in a lot of these talks I've been doing, this is where we need production on site. If we're going to do this, we need a little storage space. And it doesn't have to be a lot. On Glamourous, we are always constantly getting kicked out. We have a guy, Chris, and Adam knows him quite well. Chris, one of our guys, and his expert is just finding all these little nooks and crannies. And then it got a bit much. We were crowding out the studio. So I got two 40-foot containers, storage containers, the metal storage containers. And it was amazing by breaking things down, what we could store in there. But yes, storage is a big problem. The more storage I have, then for sure, the more I'm going to reuse.
And I'm suffering from it now because Matlock flips and turns and expands and changes, and that's just part of the fun of the show. We are out of stage space, and we have 3 stages now, and we need more storage because the story is always every story. It's not Matlock specific. Let me say this. Most modern TV stories take us into new places. Yeah. It's very rare that audiences are satisfied in one spot. And I don't know if that's coming from our eroded attention spans, if that's, did Game of Thrones change the way we think about TV forever? But one of the things that we said earlier that I want to point out is that, like, how do you do this and how do you flip and turn? And I would say that the bigger your budget is, the harder it is to do because you get so specific and detailed. Joe, have you worked on shows that are just so detailed where, like, there's no way you can go back to the wall?
Yes, I have. Yes, absolutely.
So, like, there are shows like that. I think, what's the one about the vampire that's comedy? Like, I don't know how you redo some of some of those.
What We Do in the Shadow?
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadow.
Anyway.
I don't know how you could reuse some of that. I mean, you are in a kind of a haunted house. So you could return some of the things, but, like, That's where it's challenging, is that like you there's a level of specificity. And I think that one of the things that worked so well is that Glamourous, Matlock, Good Sam, they were all in this kind of category that I would call like work life drama. Crime drama is a very good place to reuse things, because there's like alleys and criminals and like jails. They all kind of are the same in some way. So like not every show can do that, is what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I can, this would be a good point to bring up. We actually had some challenges getting this to Adam because of storage. It was during the actor strike, and the production hadn't set up any production space. So they said, well, we don't really have. So when we were finishing up, they said, we don't really have any space, so you can bring it to us right now. So we had a production manager, Kieran Singh, and I have to credit him because he was like a dog with a bone. He didn't take that. He said, okay, well, we'll store it in trucks here. And then we found out that the trucks we needed to enter California, they were fairly rare, like up this way, or not rare, but they're all being used. And people didn't want to store them for months. So we then had to put them in cheaper trucks, just normal Ontario type trucking registered trucks, store them there. And then when it came time that Matlock actually started, we switched trucks and sent them on their way. So right from even we were running into storage problems in a way.
Well, and I would say that this is the part of the podcast that I'm most excited by, because I didn't know that part until Joe's podcast with you guys. And then I was on the phone in the California side, because I had heard, separate from Joe, that there were storage issues here. And I did kind of have a meltdown, because I was like, what do you mean there's a storage issue? No one's working. Put it in a Walmart parking lot. I don't care where you put it. Like, how on earth can there be a storage issue? And maybe it took that explosion from me for someone to be like, oh, I mean, I don't know. I just know that like 24 hours later or 2 weeks later, whatever it was, someone called and said, oh, they're on their way. And I just remember like, thank God, because there's so many parts even before Joe took it down, there were people who could have said no, and the idea could have been done. Mm-hmm. So it took, like, without exaggeration, it probably took 25 yeses to get that set here.
Wow. I mean, and that all takes time, cost, overcoming roadblocks, right? I mean, that's incredible. That's a lot of yeses that you need to overcome. And that comes back down to sort of our conversation a bit earlier, right? Around, that need to sort of get everybody on board, and make sure, to green light it from the beginning. Right. Well, I mean,
I think that the interesting thing is that, Joe, would you say that it was hard to get that set taken down and moved?
The physical part of it was not hard, right? Because as I explained to people, we would have had to break pieces down to put it in the bin anyways. You can't throw like big walls in the bin. So we would have been breaking those down to the components and even smashing some of those up to get good use in the bin, which was going to landfill. In terms of our part, it was about the same amount of labor to just get it into trucks. There was very little difference. But what was hard, as you say, was convincing everybody that this is worth saving.
And that's where mine was. And that's what's funny about
but the physical part of it,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, that's where you came in, yeah.
And that's where I found it to be interesting, is because the actual thing, the real thing, saving the set, was the easy part. It was all the like phone call, email, could we, should we, writing, Mother Earth deserves this, all that stuff. And so that's where I feel like I can zoom out for a second and go, oh, it's just a frame of mind. It's kind of as simple as the fact that we push our trash cans out to the street on Sunday mornings and our trash goes away, and that's easy and we don't have to think about it. And that's kind of where my head goes, is that like, oh, it's easy to just throw away a set. We've done that for a lot. Like, that's what shows do. They're like, goodbye, collapse like a Vegas casino, and we move on to the next thing. But there's this slow amoeba in everyone's brains. It has to go, oh, it's just as easy to reuse it. We just have to say yes a little bit more, and then it gets easier. Is that making sense to you?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
It's interesting because I remember Adam speaking on the last time that we chatted, and you said some of this thinking came from your work with theater, right? Because theater is always having to scrounge and make do with sort of limited budgets and sets and so on. So I still have that kind of
Oh, no, you're right. I could hug
ringing
you
in my
right now.
ears.
I could hug you right now, Mark, because I said this in the beginning of the other podcast. Joe and I have a background in theater, and I think
Yeah.
that comes from, and like, you save every popsicle stick in theater so that you can turn it into something one day. And I think that's where the philosophy came from.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I love that idea of, and I think as building materials and things get more and more expensive, it just makes more economic sense anyway. And we can do a lot more with less, because who knows what's going to happen here in the future of film. And maybe this is sort of a question on, as we're on the home stretch here, where do you both see this going? Right. Or, in terms, is this something that we're going to see more of, and it's going to be easier to bring these ideas forward and these methodologies, or is it still going to be sort of status quo, especially with the way that the film industry is today?
Maybe I'm optimistic, but I think as wood gets more expensive and things, I think we have a much better business case to save it. In an ideal world, we would have a Zena and myself and a number of people are trying to get a warehouse space that we could even share amongst shows. Like, because part of the problem is the timing. If my show's going down and I don't have a show that I can pass stuff on to right away, then that starts to look like it's going to landfill. If we had a warehouse space that we could bring things to, then that opens it up for everybody.
Yeah, like a share shed. But I mean, we have something here called like recycled sets. And the challenge with that is, again, it's the same thing. We've talked about labor and storage and like who pays for it and how does it stay alive? And like, do you really want to use someone's, crappy carpet? So like you need an editor. I feel like you need a construction coordinator and an art director to look at stuff and be like, is this valuable? Is this worth saving? And then like, the good night on all of this for me is that it is trending in the right direction, but it needs momentum. And Joe too, you guys too, we're doing the right thing by talking about it. And you just have to keep talking about it and keep telling anybody it's a great idea. And hope that momentum of the tidal wave keeps going. But I can tell you the moment I stop, it will go back the other way.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see the momentum of it is perpetual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always
and it's dollars and cents. Yeah.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well,
awesome.
My gosh, I really thank you both for taking the time and walking through all of this and for what you're doing and continuing to talk about it and all of that. I just really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I love this, and I love that you got Joe. I love you, Joe. And I love that we got to do it again, Zena and Mark. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Yeah,
thank you, Joe.
Ditto from me too. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Social media is by Picnic Social. Our editor and producer is Rachel Werble.